Queened, a double-fronted shop stood. The bowed windows and small panes, some with bullseyes, housed a collection of dark glass bottles, large glass bottles, shaped like gourds, in magnificent colours, greens you would never find in nature, deep reds and violets that made the shop front, when it was lit from within, glow like jewels. It was to this shop front that Matilda came, wringing her poor cold hands in both perplexity and cold on this wintry November evening. 5:30, the castle clock had chimed as she made her slippery way down the steep, wet, cobbled street, and she hoped that Mr. Fox would still be in back, mixing up powders and compounds, making pills on his strange washboard. She knocked, gingerly, her fist hurting as she did so, and she gave a small "oh" of pain and stuffed the hand into the comforting warmth of her mouth. It was raining. She had no coat. She watched as the glass door flickered with a dark shape, and with a rattle of keys the door was opened by Mr. Fox. "Why, Matilda Ray," the chemist exclaimed, poking his spectacles up his long waxy nose. Come in, my dear, you'll catch your death." Matilda walked into the relative warmth of the shop. She breathed in its pungent scent of perfumes and potions. "Now then, Matilda," he said, taking her small red cold hands between his large dry white ones, "what brings you here?" Matilda sniffed, a sound which made Mr. Fox wrinkle his nose, and having swallowed the product of her sniffing, she opened her mouth and said, "It's me man. She's bad, sir. She said to come and ask for help. No powder." Mr. Fox looked at the girl who stood before him, glanced at the mahogany clock on the wall, and also back over his shoulder for whatever work she was preventing him from completing. "Have you money, Matilda?" "No, sir." She hoped disconsolately, and looked as if she was about to spit on the floor, which she doubtless would have done had she been anywhere less forbidding than a chemist shop after hours and begging a favour. "Me man said you'd understanding." Mr. Fox looked again at the child in front of him with an appraising glint in his sharp blue eyes. "We did discuss something last time she had need of my services, but I'd no idea it would come to fruition quite so soon." Matilda looked lost at his words, and realising this, Mr. Fox looked more kindly on the girl standing before him, top to toe. Her hair was fair and relatively clean, a fresh complexion which was unusual for the offspring of his clients. He watched her unconsciously bite her lip, full and red, with her top teeth, which were, he noticed, clean-looking, strong and white. "How old are you, Matilda?" She stepped from one foot to the other, quite anxious about her mother, who she'd left 10 minutes before, pale and sweating on the bed they shared, groaning faintly for help. She seemed irritated by the question and stuck out her chin defiantly. "I'm 14, sir." He saw, suddenly, a glimpse of the woman she had become, well-fleshed, spirited, handsome, and noticed with a sudden need to swallow the faint swell of her forming figure under the cheap sodden dress she wore. "Next month," she continued, now looking down, again biting her lip. He saw the dark, thick lashes resting on the rose of her cheek. She'd do, he thought to himself. At a pinch, she'd do. With a nod, he turned quickly, businesslike, pushed the spectacles back up his nose and made for the back room. "Follow me, Matilda." She did so, but only after a moment's hesitation. There had been a feeling of unease while he was watching her, as if he were hungry. However, given the plight she was in, she had little choice but to do as he bid. She followed, glancing cautiously about her as she left the brightness of the shop front for the gloom of the back room. It was small, crowned with furniture, heavy merchant's chests with hundreds of drawers, tall glass-fronted cabinets housing bottles and jars, and in the middle of the room a large mahogany table, as large as could fit in the space. This last was littered with paper, pieces of small machinery and glass bottles of many different colours, each bearing a label with marks she could not understand. He moved aside a number of the bottles and produced a scrap of paper from a drawer and began to measure out a small quantity of white powder using a set of fine silver scales. She watched as he deftly poured out the powder into the middle of the paper and folded up the edges to make a neat envelope. This he slid across the table towards Matilda's calling hand. "There," he said, and she made to grab the package, but as he did so, his large priestly hand slapped on top of her small one. It hurt, and exclaiming in pain, she attempted to wrest it free, to put it under her arm for comfort. He shot out his hand again and grabbed her firmly by the thin wrist. "Now, Matilda," he said in a whisper, "what about remuneration?" She looked blank, and he pulled her closer, so close she could see the hairs in his nose, smell the sickly sweetness of his breath, and even hear the ticking of his pocket watch. She stopped her breath. "Payment, Matilda," he repeated, and she sighed suddenly, realisation dawning. She knew the course of events now, and defeatedly let her mind get ready to wander and her body to relax. He leaned closer, and she became impatient for him to get it over with, idly wondering if she ought to undo her dress for him, and she could sense waves of both excitement and apprehension coming from him. She abruptly got her wrist free, hoiked up her skirt and gestured towards the floor. "You're all right, Mr. Fox." It seemed he came to the surface of a dream suddenly. He began to cluck wildly and exclaimed, "Oh, merciful heavens, no! Dear Lord, no! No, you have it wrong!" Matilda felt equal prickling measures of embarrassment and confusion, and in her agitation fled from the shop, adjusting her skirt as she flew through the door, leaving it wide open and the bell jangling and the cold November rain hissing quietly in. Mr. Fox paced to the door, began to pick up papers that had fallen from the side when Matilda ran. He began to process the magnitude of what had almost just occurred. It made him feel unwell. How had she come to that dreadful conclusion? With a moment of clarity, he thought of the girl's dam. No doubt she prostituted herself. No moral guardian for a young woman. Why, he had been about to offer the child employment in the shop. Cleaning, maybe taking a few pennies at the till. Still, at least he'd discovered her wantonness before he made the offer. Already at the tender age of 13 years, she had been infected with the worm of moral decay. He ought to call a constable. She had solicited him, hadn't she? No doubt a night spent in the jail would do her good, show her the error of her ways before they became habitual. Yes, he thought, as he measured out white powder and laid them neatly in the middle of paper slips. Yes, he would involve the law. That wanton girl had nearly been in his employ. It was his duty, as an educated and decent gentleman, to ensure the decency and cleanliness of the streets his customers habituated. He finished his folding, ensuring all the packages were ready for the morning's clientele. He was glad he'd completed that before having to step out to call a constable. It was his bread and butter after all.